This is a download from the BBC of the World Football Phone-In, which is broadcast as part of the Up All Night programme on 5 Live from 2:30am to 4am on Saturday mornings. Here's the latest edition.
It's Europe and South America. The legend Dino, the Wikipedia, if you like, is in Rio to take all your questions and comments on football from South American players from over there playing in our leagues as well. And Andy Brassel, the top brass, the Lion of Leon, is in, well, he's either in Switzerland or Austria. Honestly, I don't know the difference. Perhaps he could tell us himself, covering the European Championships. Do you know where you are exactly?
I'm in Switzerland and it's still closed.
And it's all closed, yeah?
Well, yeah, it's after 6, of course, yeah.
Yeah, right. And you're sure it's Switzerland, not Austria now?
Absolutely, definitely sure.
And what's the difference?
I'm not sure if my phone's clear on that sometimes.
Sure, what's the difference then? For those of us who can't tell the difference, what's the difference between Switzerland and Austria? Well,
the big difference, I suppose, is Austria hasn't had probably the best game of the tournament last night in Holland, France. It's definitely been the best so far, is the general consensus here.
And Wikipedia, do you know the difference between Austria and Switzerland?
No, please enlighten me. What, one invented the cuckoo clock and the other produced Adolf Hitler? Will that do?
That's more like it. Now I know you're... Andy, you're clearly in the country that produced the cuckoo clock. No, we shouldn't take the mickey. Let's talk football now. 0500 909 693 Tim. You got me started. 0500 909 693. Come on, join us. Let's talk football. South American-wise or European-wise. There's been some great games to talk about as well. And Tim, you've been watching some of the European Championships as well, I imagine.
Not as much as I would like. I've spent this week... in that the kind of the dreg end of the profession of the football journalist, which is chasing an interview with Adriano, who's he's been training with Brazil. So that means just every day schlepping up the hills outside Rio where Brazil train. And it's meant that I really haven't had a chance to see hardly anything. I caught most of the Holland-France game today, which was terrific. This weekend I won't really be able to take any in because we've got World Cup qualifiers over this side of the Atlantic exactly at the same time as the games. So really, the Euro 2008 has kind of passed me by so far, and I think it kind of will do until we get to the knockout stages. So I'm relying on Andy Brassel to keep me in touch with what's been happening so far.
And did you get that interview with Adriano?
Yes, I did. It's like 3 days of just hanging around, boiling your head in a vat of water for in the end. I was very, very lucky to get it. It was only kind of five minutes with like, can you wind up please? Can you wind up please? Being yelled in the ear. But it was a privilege to be able to talk to me. He hasn't really been given any exclusives since he's been back in Brazil, trying to play his way out of his personal crisis. And he had a few interesting things to say for himself. He's a fascinating figure, and I really shouldn't interview people because as soon as they're nice enough to speak to me, I end up liking them. And my personal nightmare, and I've always steered clear of it, is to interview Gilberto Silva. Because then I couldn't hate him anymore. He's obviously a really, really nice bloke. It's a shame that he has to ruin what would otherwise be a terrific friendship by playing football. If I did sit down and interview him, I couldn't slag off his football anymore. So I think I'm going to steer clear of interviewing him anyway.
Okay, perhaps you tell us more about the Adriano interview during the course of this phone-in. 0500 909 693. Let's kick off the phone-in with Patrick in London. Good morning, Patrick.
Oh, good morning, Dalton.
Hi, mate. Yeah, you want to talk about
Donington Road, you know it well, don't you?
Absolutely, but we want to talk about European Championships this morning.
Yes, I know that, yes. Well, I've been hanging on so long and the hairs from my ears are stuck to the phone, anyway.
That's my fault, sorry, mate. You got me started.
Sorry.
Go ahead, mate.
I'm thinking of who potentially will be the finalists. Are they likely to meet Spain and Portugal together, or are they both playing each other in the semis if they get there?
No, they're different halves of the group, I do believe, so that is a possibility. In many ways, I suppose, with the football they've played so far, although Spain have only played once, it would be a bit of a dream final. Of course, the fact is no one actually wins anything during the group phases, so it's difficult. to see how things will really take shape until we've got to at least the quarterfinals. I feel that's where it's going to start properly hotting up, even though there've been some good games so far.
Yeah, I was impressed with the Dutch and so forth, but I was saying to your researcher that I feel the younger legs will take them through, the Torreses of Spain and the Ronaldos of Portugal. The younger men, and they've got the energy. I don't think Nistelrooy will last the tournament.
I think that's an excellent.
I think he'll run out of steam.
That's an excellent point, actually, Patrick. I mean, we forget that Van Nistelrooy, of course, has missed a large part of the season through injury, and it's just the fact that he's putting in such a huge amount of work in every game. He's been outstanding in both the games so far, and he's got through a lot of work as a lone striker.
I've noticed also that he's combing his hair rather than brushing it. He's put his hair forward now. He's losing his hair a bit. He's in his 30s now.
Yeah.
Yeah, unlike as you just pointed out, most of the Portugal team as well. It's a big difference. There's been a real regeneration of the team, starting with the last European Championship. After that,
Correct.
They lost Rui Costa and Fernando Couto, and since the last World Cup, where they were so good as well, they lost Hugo Paleta.
They need to win. Both of those teams need to win it because they've done nothing in world football in their history, have they? Both Portugal or Spain.
Well, Spain have got one European Championship, and that's it. Yeah, underachievers. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Patrick, thanks a lot for the call. Appreciate it, Tim. A question for you on Big Phil going to Chelsea. And you've said in the past, have you, says one of our listeners, that he's made some controversial statements, not least on homosexuality.
Well, no, the one on homosexuality, he's denied ever having made.
Okay.
But he is on record as being an admirer of Chile's General Pinochet, on the kind of you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs kind of line. Strictly on football, it's such a fascinating development. This is kind of spaced the final frontier for Brazilian coaches or South American coaches. There haven't been any, or there have been very, very few, who've succeeded in European club football. So there'll be lots and lots of coaches in Brazil.
But just hang on a second, because Cleo in Aldershot, we call her the book, she's got a question just on Big Phil going to Chelsea for you, Cleo.
Yes, I have for Andy, a Swiss roll this week.
It's for Andy, not for Tim.
Well, for Andy and Tim. It's a question for both, and a question for Tim about Veron's recall. But it's the fact that Big Phil has never managed a European club side. He's had 9 Brazilian championships. He took Brazil to the 2002 World Cup and Portugal to the 2004 Euro thing. But how do you feel with his communication skills? I know he's had a bit of trouble. I heard Tim on the breakfast show talking to Sheila Fogarty about the same thing, his temper, his temperament. You know, what tips do we give him to deal with the British media, because they can be very intrusive?
Okay, let's take Tim first, because I interrupted you.
Well, I think it's a fascinating challenge for 3 reasons. Number one is that Phil Scolari, he's a group former. He's always been a terrific group former. Done it time and time again with Brazil and his team that won, the squad that won the 2002 World Cup with a Scolari family. He's been able to adapt that to Portugal, same language but a different culture. But what he doesn't have any experience of whatsoever is multinational squads. Now, those South American coaches who've come over to European football, sometimes they've really struggled with this. With trying to form a group, which is really big in South American football, the idea of forming a group, but from a squad of 15, 20 different nationalities. There's nothing in South America that really prepares you for this. It's all a little bit provincial compared to, a modern European capital city with 100 languages being spoken in a square kilometre. So will his group-forming skills be able to function in an environment where his players are of such cultural diversity? That's a fascinating aspect, number one. Number 2 is, as Cleo touched on there, the media. Now, Phil Scolari does burn a very short fuse. He's clumped a few over here. He clumped a Serbian over there. Is he going to clump anyone in England? Now, it's real pressure from the Brazilian media being the Brazilian national team coach, especially when they're struggling to qualify for the World Cup as they were under his reign in 2001. But it's sporting pressure. The kind of pressure that the English tabloid press can put on is a different kind of pressure altogether. And number three, the third reason I think it's fascinating, is that he doesn't really have any experience working, or very much experience working in a league system. When he was still a club coach in Brazil, the national championship was playoffs. It was a kind of league phase where the top 8 or something go through, and then it's playoffs. And he's been very, very good at this playoff system, at kind of cup football, if you like, but a league basis where 3 points in August are worth the same thing as 3 points in May. Preparing your side for consistency over the course of the campaign. He doesn't really have any experience of that. So for these three reasons, I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how he gets on.
And as good as they make those cuckoo clocks, you know that they can't make a telephone in Switzerland, don't you? And Linville in Carlisle says, don't forget Toblerones, they grow them in Switzerland. And Richard says, look, the difference between Austria and Switzerland is this same difference as between Nigeria and Liberia. It's very important if you live there, and don't be rude in future. That's to me rather than you, Tim. 0500 909 693. Cleo, thanks a lot for the question. We'll get Andy back in a second if we can find a decent line in the whole of Switzerland that doesn't cut off halfway through. 0500 909 693, though, if you'd like to join us this morning on our World Football phone-in. Questions on South American football and the European Championships as well, please. Wilco in Newcastle says, Tim, you've been talking a lot recently about Marcelo Moreno, but I was surprised to see he moved to Shakhtar Donetsk. Why would an excellent prospect like that move to such a low-key league when there were bigger clubs knocking on his door?
Well, it's probably all about the money. Marcelo Moreno Martins, Bolivian-born of a Brazilian father, has been playing his football in Brazil with Cruzeiro, has had an exceptional campaign in the Libertadores. Is a striker who reminds me a little bit of a young Gabriel Batistuta, perhaps without quite the explosive pace, but that kind of striker. Well, I think one of the reasons here is Shakhtar Donetsk really opened the bank for him. And they came once, he turned them down. They came twice, he turned them down. Then they took him over there to have a look at the club and its installations. He saw that he can communicate well with the manager. There's lots of Brazilians already there. And the offer was upped again. And at that point, he went. There is the point to be made of 50% of him is owned by an investment consortium. I think 40% was Cruzeiro, and 10% he owned himself. So he's made a nice little bit out of a cut out of that transfer money. He is saying that it's not the move that he dreamt of. He really wanted to go, I think, either especially to Spain or maybe to England as well. And I suppose the plan is now do so well in Ukraine that he gets picked up later, further on down the line, by one of the clubs in the major leagues. But I think the short answer, I've just given you the very long answer there, but the short answer is that money talked. Cuckoo.
Andy Brassel, the top brass, is back in with us. And Andy, straight away on the question of Luis Felipe Scolari, John in Eastleigh wants to know, he says he's a Chelsea fan preparing for the arrival of Deco, but how come Barca seem to be more than happy to let him go? Has he been poor for them this last season, and where would he fit in at Chelsea?
Very. He's not been very good at all this last season, but a lot of that has been to do with fitness. It goes one of two ways with players when it comes into the European Championships who've been injured. They either struggle to find any rhythm, or with the likes of Deco and so far Van Nistelrooy, as we were talking about before, they seem to have almost benefited from an extended break. And Deco's been saying to journalists this week that he's improving every game he plays as he's getting his match fitness back. The fact that Scolari's got such faith in him is a big part of his success as well. And I suspect that would be the reason that Scolari would want him at Chelsea with him. I think it could work. He's definitely coped with the pace of the Championship so far, despite, as we say, only having played 15 games for Barcelona this season. I think the last one he played was in the semi-final of the Champions League against Manchester United. So he's looking really towards his 2004 form for Porto or his 2006 form for Barcelona. So there's no reason why he couldn't make a big impact at Chelsea should he join next season.
From Marcus in Glasgow, a bit of a random question for the Vic Wikipedia of South American football that is the Legendino. In the excellent game of Football Manager, the best young player in the game is Nicolas Milan, who I think plays for Colo Colo. He's only 15 when the game starts, but after 2 or 3 years, he's almost unstoppable. Does Tim know anything about him? And if so, is he as good as the game makes him out to be?
Well, it's very hard to tell. I mean, he had 10 minutes as a substitute when he was 14, when Colo Colo fielded a reserve side. He was compared to Cristiano Ronaldo and so on, but we haven't heard too much of him since. So I feel a little bit sorry for him, to be honest, with so much publicity heaped on him so early for the sake of 10 minutes. Hopefully he'll get picked for Chile next year in the South American under-17s. He'll be at home. And that'll be a good platform for us to see if there really is something there to him.
We'll find out a bit
I
more
think
then.
this game, this Football Manager, it kind of has a history in some cases of getting a little bit over-enthusiastic about some almost pre-adolescent players. They don't always live up. They're not always as good at 18, 19 as that they promised to be when they're prepubescent.
Dimi's on the M1. Dimi, good morning.
Hi then, Don, you all right?
Yeah, very well, thanks very much. You've got a question for Tim, yeah?
I've got a question for both, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick one for Tim. Forget Phil Scolari. Forget that. First off, Alexandre Pato. I've heard he's the real deal. Is this really true?
Yeah, he's an astonishing natural talent.
Good. Right. Very good. He's at AC Milan. Is that right? What are the chances that AC Milan they bought an astonishing talent? What are the chances of? Let's face it, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and what are the chances of Alexandre Pato coming from Milan to Sheffield Wednesday on loan just for like 6 months? Is that possible at all?
Okay.
0.0000. There's this fabulous ad on Brazilian TV at the moment. It's all about buying a car, and there's zero. It's in a school, and it's a school teacher talking, and all of the pupils are like are kind of puppets. Puppets of animals, and she asks a couple of questions like how much interest you pay, and the answer to all these questions is zero. And the kind of the puppet animals enthusiastically answer 0, 0, 0, and then the teacher says how many cars are animals allowed to buy? And then all of the animal puppets kind of look down despondently and say 0. I'm afraid the answer to Sheffield Wednesday getting Alexandre Pato on loan is somewhat less than 0.
Okay, well, but this is fine. We'll still beat Charlton. Also, just one quick one.
Hey.
I'm also half Greek. Sorry, Don.
Εντάξει,
Yamas, my friend. Yamas.
Έξω, έλα ρε, έξω.
Just one quick one for not for Tim. Sorry, just that's gone.
Ελαδρά ο Μεδρά.
Greece won 2004. I'm half Greek. I've got the tattoo on my back to prove it. But
I can speak better Greek than you. Timmy, I can speak. I'm a Nigerian. I can speak better Greek than a Greek.
No.
I just said Heladharao Medhara. You didn't say anything.
We've all had it. Well, yeah, I've had a drink, Don.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Just a quick question to Andy. Does he think I'm with Holland this year? What does he think? Essentially,
like I said, I don't think anyone wins it in the group stage, and often the feeling like, of course, Spain looked so great in 2006. That I suppose in 2004, like the Portuguese dominated the tournament. The difference is they managed, after a really poor start in the first game, to maintain that all the way to the final. There's no reason you can't recover from a first game. I think what's first game defeat, and what I think's really good in the group is the next game it pits Spain against Sweden, who both won in the first game, and Russia against Greece. So it looks very unlikely that anything will be decided in that next game. So it keeps the group open. I think Greece have obviously overachieved. I think the country will still obviously be very, very disappointed if they don't get into the second phase. I think you've got to bear in mind like what an incredible achievement it was with relatively limited resources. But on the other hand, it's an excellent qualifying campaign, apart from the home defeat to Turkey early on. So yeah, if they didn't get beyond that first little stage, it would be a real disappointment for them, especially as the defending champions. It may be a bit of a shame for the competition as well, but it's do or die for them against Russia. There's no doubt about that.
Jimmy, thanks very much for that. And Paul in Reading has pointed out that actually the Swiss telephone system is so advanced that in 1977 it enabled Rick Wakeman to play an organ in a church down it and into a recording studio at the other end during the making of Yes, Going for the One album. So should we carry on with the football now? Thank you very much. I appreciate that information anyway, Paul. 0500 909 693. Lots of questions on European football and South American football for our guest. This one's for the Legendino. Burnley FC are on the verge of signing Peruvian goalkeeper Diego Penny. Is he any good? From Ian?
I didn't know that. No, he's not bad at all. A very tall, blonde figure. He closed a goal when they drew against Brazil. He had a terrific game towards the end of last year. Since then, he's lost his place in the Peruvian national side. He had one very poor game afterwards, but he's big, can cover his goal, and I like him. I think that could work out for Burnley.
I'm going to have to do this text in a Russian accent, only because it's come to me in that way. I can't do it in an English accent. So mark that 10, please, for my Russia. Russia are far from finished, for we are determined and resilient, and like Chukovskaya's Sofia Petrova, and it is with the ruthless efficiency of Bulgakov's Azazello and shameless Gogolian shenanigans reminiscent of Chichikov, i.e. cheating a bit, we will defeat the Greeks 2-0, avenging the infliction of George Michael upon a susceptible post-New Wave public baffled by bourgeois new romanticism. That is from Linvalovich, temporary Russian in Carlisle. Mark Soughton?
Well, I disagree with the text for a start. I don't think the Russians have done well. In fact, I think the team are as bad as your accent. Terrible.
Marks out of 10.
Well, I said the team were as bad as your accent. Terrible. Yeah. So that's a -1.
Oh, you can do better than that, Andy Brassel, can't you?
Well, I know. I think Russia have it all to play for. I've no idea how the Russian people feel on it, but Windsor Davis sounds convinced anyway.
And match of the tournament for you so far?
Definitely Netherlands, France. You are asking me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I agree with Ben. Holland actually probably played better individually and as a team against Italy. But it was just a better game. I think France contributed a lot. That they didn't defend spectacularly. They always play better when they've got 5 in midfield. They're much better shape. Lets Ribéry off the leash to do what he can do best. Of course, they've got it all to do now. As far as the player of the tournament, I think Wesley Sneijder of Holland is a very good choice so far. He's been excellent in both games.
0500 909 693. We're talking European Championships and South American football. The Legendinos in Rio to take your questions and comments on football from South America. And the top brass, the Lion of Leon, is in Switzerland. Yes, I know the difference finally. And he will take any questions you might have about the European Championships. Austin in London, good morning.
Oh, hi, good morning.
Hiya.
Good morning. Yeah, it's nice to be on your program again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I was just going to say that I have a group of friends. We're on a forum, and I was trying to predict the 8 quarterfinalists that will come out from the groups. And I had Italy and France coming out from their own group. So Holland has really surprised us in that respect, because I think they surprised themselves too.
Well, they're not arguing anymore, are they? They're not arguing amongst themselves, you know.
I don't know. Well, without Clarence Seedorf, Edgar Davids, and the rest of them.
Oh, what? They got rid of the black players, the troublemakers. Is that what you're trying to say, Austin?
No, I'm not saying
No, you're the one who's saying Seedorf, Edgar Davids, yeah? It doesn't take a genius to see that those are the black players, and they're not there anymore. Oh, I think we've lost the top brass as well for now. But anyway, go on.
I was just saying that we're part of an old brigade where you thought Holland would do well and then they would shoot themselves in the foot. I'm saying that they now have a new breed of players, and yet they're performing so well. So it's a new Holland. Maybe under Van Basten, they've inculcated a new drive. I don't think it has anything to do with the black players.
Okay, but I'll ask Andy Brassel. Holland are all white now. All right now.
Yeah. Austin's right. It's a very, very different Holland side. I think that their work rate is what has impressed so much over the first two games. That there seems to be a younger feel to the squad, less feel of all those political problems that have caused them so many difficulties since they last won the European Championship in 1988. The feeling is they've underachieved in almost every tournament since. But the amount of effort they're willing to put in for each other, slightly more conservative setup with Van Basten, they break extremely well. There's a lot of pace. Of course, the fact that they can make such positive substitutions, bring on Van Persie and Robben, makes a huge difference as well. There seems to be a more economy to the way they're attacking, and they're putting in the effort in the right areas. So
what's the main difference, though? I mean, really, if you compare it to the World Cup or the last European Championships, what's the main difference with Holland this time around? Is it the Van Basten factor or what?
The team spirit, the work rate. It's not really about the individuals. I think Ben sort of hit the nail on the head before when he was saying that there's already a couple of Dutch players who you could have talked about as outstanding players of the tournament. We're not looking at just one player making the difference. There's quite a few of them.
But Austin, you wanted to talk about the Euro rules as such as well.
Yes,
what do you mean?
I think I'm not sure in what year they introduced it, but all of a sudden, teams that play in the groups, if they get through the knockout stages to the semi-finals, then play themselves again in the semi-finals. And I think that's ludicrous. Before, it was always that if you go through the groups, you could only meet again if you beat all the other teams in knockout stages in the finals. And all of a sudden, they're now playing them in the semi-finals, and it's almost as if it's accepted. I think that is terrible. And I think they should look into it and correct that. I actually think it's a mistake. Okay. I don't know why they're doing it. I think what happened was when you had the two best teams, and then I think the best 4 third-place teams. There was a time when they had 24 teams in the tournament, and then because of that, it led to this system being put in place whereby teams that were in the same group ended up playing in the semi-finals because they could not work out a better way to get around it. And now it seems as if it's entrenched. And I think they should look into it, because there's no point in having a group of death like France, Italy, Holland, and Romania, and then you meet again in semi-finals. That is just not fair.
Austin, thanks a lot for the call, and very good points as well. 0500 909 693. We're talking South American football and European Championship football. Pick up the phone and give us a call. And Tim, one thing that I've noticed is that with Brazilian players playing in Turkey, Poland, Croatia and Portugal, this is like Brazilian championships anyway, not just European championships. I wonder if that fact has been noticed in Brazil where you are.
Oh, very much so, and they're very proud of it. And there's no sense at all in that these players have betrayed Brazil by representing these countries. These are players who, by and large, wouldn't have been considered for the Brazilian national team. So they've gone and naturalised themselves, and they're doing well, and good luck to them. And Brazilians are taking pride in it. And the most fascinating case is the one playing for Poland. Jorge Guerreiro, who in Brazil was a left-back, and he played for big clubs. He played for Flamengo and Corinthians, the two most popular clubs in Brazil. But he was a fairly nondescript left-back. He really didn't pull up any trees at all. And we see him for Poland as the attacking midfielder, full of ideas, full of tricks and confidence, and scoring a goal which may well have been offside, but it counted anyway. And it's remarkable to see this transformation. And part of this is perhaps the boost of confidence that a player gets when he goes somewhere where perhaps the level of skill isn't quite as high as it is in Brazil. So he stands out a little bit. People respect him because he's Brazilian, and he blossoms in this environment, and he starts doing things that he wouldn't have attempted in Brazil. There's one point that Dunga, the national team coach of Brazil, makes quite a lot, which is that often, and Jorge Guerreiro of Poland is an example here, often when Brazilian players go to Europe, their extra skill means that their position changes. Like a fullback will become an attacking midfielder. An attacking midfielder will become a striker. Now, Dunga, I know he's a little bit iffy about this process when it happens to players who want to play for the Brazilian national team, because he thinks that sometimes the Brazilian players, because of their extra ability, when they go to European club football, they can get away without doing so much marking, because their clubs will free them, play them a little bit further forward. Now, that's the fascinating thing about the development with Anderson at Manchester United, because he's gone the other way. He's an example of someone who went across as an attacking midfielder, who's been played more as a disciplined central midfielder. In summary, Brazilians are proud of what their compatriots are doing in Austria and Switzerland.
Yeah, but as Suhail in Edinburgh points out, you could argue that this naturalised ruling is ruining the international game, because, with Brazil exporting as many of its footballers as it does, you could be faced with a scenario in a few years' time where every team has one or two Brazilians playing for every national team. Surely, Andy Brassel, that's going to ruin the international dimension of the game. It changes it, doesn't it?
I think there's a touch of exaggeration there. I mean, of course, it is, I suppose, a knock-on effect of more and more Brazilians coming and applying their trade successfully in Europe. But on the other hand, it's not something completely new. Of course, Alfredo Di Stefano played for 3 different international teams when he was a player back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, but the rules have changed since then, haven't they?
But they've changed back. There was a sort of amnesty. There was an amnesty where you could change your nationality within a certain period of time, and FIFA have put a block on that now. And there's certainly, even in that period, there couldn't have been a repeat of the situation where you could have played for one country and then go and play for another. So I think you can blow it a bit out of proportion.
Imran in Bradford, good morning.
Good morning, Don. How are you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Don. Very well. Yeah, Don, I've got a couple of points, actually. One is what Tim mentioned about Big Phil Scolari. When he comes over here, whether he'll be able to, manage players that are of, different backgrounds. And I don't think that'll be a problem at all. I really don't, because, even if you can't speak the language, if you can relate to someone on a football level, especially the players, it makes absolutely no difference at all. Obviously it'll help, Phil, that if he can come over here, and he can get his message across. But I think in terms of a team itself, if you can't speak English, Don, whether the kids from Spain, Argentina, whatever, within 10, 15 minutes you can be on the wavelength on a football pitch.
I think everybody agrees with you, and I think he'll get his message across. As Tim has already suggested, he's got a nifty little right hand, hasn't he? Or is it a left hand? But,
Can I give an example? Imran, of the kind of thing I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because I saw Scolari give a lecture about this very subject about 18 months ago here in Brazil. He was talking about the differences of working with Portugal. And one of the things that worked very well for him with Brazilian players was getting them all together and giving them the tub-thumping speech, God wants us to win, God's on our side, and all the rest of it. When he went over to Portugal and tried the same thing, it just left them all completely cold. Didn't work at all. So he saw that he had to change completely the way that he dealt with his players. What he decided in the end was this kind of getting them all together collectively and tub-thumping, it just didn't work. So he would try and motivate them on an individual level. He's often worked with a sports psychologist called Regina Brandão, who says that she thinks he's an absolute genius at this, at being flexible and at finding the key to players. But as I said earlier, he's never done it with a squad from 15 or 20 different nationalities.
Yeah, Tim, I think you're right there. I think, if you've got knowledge of the world game, Tim, I think that's a small thing, because his management you can see, it's there. And I think that, in terms of, sometimes, we hear that, a manager needs to come here, he needs to learn the language. But in terms of players, Tim, if a player can play football, he'll pick up the language in time. And I think sometimes when you look at English managers and players, they don't go play abroad, they don't go test themselves, in a different country and learn in terms of football. Because I heard Fabio Capello saying that Frank Lampard should go maybe test himself in Italy to improve himself, technically. And I think that's where maybe I think we're lacking behind, because you look at the Dutch, look at the Spanish, the way they play football, Tim, we're a long way off from getting.
Well, they've got particularly the Dutch. They've got all their technical players as well. Just on the case of Scolari, how well do you think he's going to do for Chelsea, Imran? Do you think he's going to be as good as the special one?
I think he'll do a lot better, and I think.
Better?
Tottenham
a lot better. He can't do much better. I mean, the special one won nearly everything, didn't he?
No, he was a big failure in Champions League.
Right, yeah, of course.
And I think that the big difference is that if they share his vision and his philosophy, then he'll do the job. But I think you look at the management and the owner, I don't really think they've got, in terms of stability, at a football club. So that'll be interesting after one season. If he doesn't win a major trophy, are they going to get shot of him? But I would definitely give him 3 years, and in that time, Don, he will win the Champions League.
Well, listen, when you have the money of Abramovich, you can say that. But you haven't at the moment. But the fair point, Imran. Just out of interest, Andy, do you think he's going to bring home the Champions League for Chelsea?
Well, I think it's a bit harsh to say that Mourinho was a Champions League failure. Well, of course, he's won it at Porto anyway, but at Chelsea, because I think two semis, Avram Grant just got that little bit further. I think it's difficult to see how Scolari can really improve that much. I think what's interesting as well is the point that it's assumed that he'll bring a lot more attacking players with him. He packs his teams with flair, etc., etc. I think with a lot of the players that have been available to him with Brazil and Portugal, he's maybe not had the option. He can be quite a conservative manager, and I think people overlook that. And with the squad that Chelsea have got, that's got to be a concern, that he'll not make Chelsea play the sort of beautiful football that Abramovich has obviously been lusting so after, and has brought his relationships with Mourinho and Grant to such a swift end. But why I think he might do well is he's very, very good, as Tim says, psychologically. He's great for getting players to play with him. He has adapted well to European football. People don't really think of him as making such a huge leap, really because of the linguistic link and cultural link between Brazil and Portugal. But there is a cultural difference, and Scolari talked at length before this announcement came out about how much he admires European football culture, how much he's learned from it, how much he likes the rigour and tactical discipline. So there's no doubt he's already adapted to a certain extent, but it's going to be very interesting.
We've got Theo in London with us. Good morning, Theo.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. I would like to revert your minds to the Holland-Italy game and the Van Nistelrooy goal. We, along with all the commentators, thought that the goal should not have stood. It was offside. Only to find out the following day that the FIFA Rule 11, Subclause 11, does give credence to the goal, and it was supported by, among others.
And just to explain to those who didn't see it, is because one of the German players was off. He was behind the goal line.
The Italian player.
Was behind the goal line.
Right, he was off without the permission of the referee.
Out of play. Yeah.
Out of play. And, and I was surprised to know that even the BBC commentators said they did not know about this rule. And many of us football followers did not know of this rule. I was just wondering whether Tim and any of the other experts were aware that this rule existed.
Tim, first of all, do you know, I don't know if you saw the game itself, but do you know of this ruling where a player can be ruled onside if the opposing player is out of play behind the goal line?
I didn't see the goal. It was one of the days when I was chasing Adriano, and I have to be honest, I wasn't aware of this particular ruling. Once I read about it, it makes complete sense to me. This is me learning a little bit about the rules of the game.
And Andy, did you learn a little bit about the rules of the game as well after that match?
Absolutely, very, very surprised. But like Tim, I can see the logic in it.
But Theo can't.
Yes, I can. I'm just saying I wasn't aware. I've been following football, and I coach a junior football team and so on. And I was not aware of this rule, and I was just saying the BBC commentators and who are not even themselves aware of it.
But isn't it the beauty of football, Theo, that every scenario seems to spring up new questions? It's not always straightforward, and the drama of the occasion seems to bring up new questions. As many rules as you have, there's always something that has never been quite considered as well.
Yeah, it's true. I follow American football as well, And I was over there a couple of years ago, and I heard one of the commentators on Fox saying that, they admire soccer for the lack of too many intricate rules that they have, and the game just flows, whereas with American football, there are so many rules and sub-clauses and whatever. But this one really took me by surprise, I must say.
It didn't take the referee by surprise, and that made the difference.
Well, they don't know what they're doing. I wonder whether all the English referees know about it. Graham Paul seemed to know about it.
Well, he's a Five Live commentator, as you know, and when we pay him, so that he should know about that. And Theo, out of interest, what's been the best match of the tournament for you so far?
Definitely the Holland-Italy game.
That's what it sounds like.
I was supporting France for the simple reason that they have, I'm from the Caribbean with the French connection from St. Lucia, and with the most black players, but they seem to be letting me down.
You can't support a team just because they've got the most black players.
Yes, I do.
And next you'll be telling me that in your house, when you play chess, the black moves first.
Come on, I know better than that.
just checking. Yeah. Really good to speak to you, sir. Thanks very much. John in Durham, good morning.
Hello, Dalton.
Hi, mate.
Yeah, can I speak to Andy, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Andy. The referees before the tournament started had a directive about shirt pull in the penalty area. And I was wondering why is it only Howard Webb pulled them up about it. He's been criticised for giving a penalty against, was it Romania? Poland, sorry. Yeah, can you tell us why you think the other referees haven't done it?
To be honest, I think there are so many instances of shirt pulling in the penalty area that even if there has been a directive about it, you're never going to spot everything. There's a referee's only got himself and the linesman who's keeping an eye on the penalty box. So and most of the time there's sort of the best part of 20 players in there. So it's very difficult to sort it all out. I think Howard Webb has to be applauded for having the guts to do that in such a important match in the last minute. I mean, I don't really see how anyone can argue that it wasn't a penalty, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, well, you see, why has he been criticised?
Well, because I guess from the Polish angle, it's got to be really, really disappointing. Any team's going to be disappointed to lose a penalty in the last minute of a game that proves so crucial, and I guess that a lot of that comes into it. But I think, like we were saying about the Holland-Italy game, we've got to take our hats off and say that the referees have made a lot of right calls so far in the European Championships, and they don't always get the credit for that. Tim talks a lot about how cowardly managers put pressure on referees and sort of try and shift the blame. I think there's a lot of truth in that, so we've got to applaud the referees when they do get it right.
John, thanks a lot for the call. 0500 909 693 is our number if you'd like to join us. We're talking European Championship football and also South American football, and footballers from South America playing in our leagues or even playing in the European Championships, as Tim's already said. Quite a lot of Brazilians playing in the European Championships amongst others as well. So let's talk football between now and 4 o'clock. If you'd like to join us, the number once again is 0500 909 693. You can text us on 85058 or email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. And please, enough texting about my Russian accent now. I apologise, okay, to all my Russian friends far and near. I apologise, but Duncan in Glasgow, to say that it sounded more like Afrikaans than Russian, that was low, mate. Stick to the day job? Okay, I will. And as far as David's concerned, apparently I shall be forever known as Ivan the Terrible after my attempt at a Russian accent. As I said, I apologise, and it will never happen again. It's only ever happened once. I lost my mind for a moment or two in all the excitement of tonight's World Football phone-in. Tim, Martin in Rotherham wants to know whether, or let's not forget, he says that Deco is Brazilian.
Let's not forget that Camoranesi of Italy won the World Cup is Argentinian. So it's not just Brazilians. There's an Argentinian there as well.
Right. Are there many Brazilians playing for Portugal?
Yeah, there's a few. Pepe, the centre-back. There's lots and lots of Brazilians nationalised playing in the Portuguese league. Can I ask Andy a quick question?
Go ahead.
I was fascinated seeing Holland today against France. More flexible than that 4-3-3 thing that maybe they were stuck in for a while. But I just wonder, looking at them, and a terrific performance. But I'm trying to imagine them later on chasing the game. When they haven't had to chase the game yet, if they go behind chasing the game, do you think, Andy, that maybe there might be a lack of pace in that defence that could be exposed if they had to go and chase the game?
I think that's absolutely right, Tim. I think there's a lot of defensive weakness there, which they've sort of nullified by playing with two defensive midfield players in a lot of the build-up games and in the start of the Italy game. Of course, we saw how those sort of tactics can come unstuck when you're chasing a game. I think France are a great example of that. They set themselves out in a formation that they're a lot more comfortable with, and then they conceded a goal in the first 10 minutes and left themselves chasing the game. I think despite the fact that Holland have started the tournament absolutely sensationally, but they may indeed struggle later on. Actually, we were talking to Pierre van Hooijdonk, the former Dutch international striker, the other day, and it was at half-time during the first Portugal game against Turkey, and he described what Portugal were doing their 4-3-3, and obviously they've got a lot of flair players up top. Deco playing his best as well. He was describing it as a wonderful organised chaos, and there was a hint of longing in his voice that maybe he missed those sort of things from the Dutch national team at present.
Does Van Hooijdonk still take responsibility for Nottingham Forest's demise?
I don't think he can say it's entirely his fault. I don't think he particularly helped at the time, but yeah.
Amandeep in Slough wants to know whether Scolari will have any influence on Ronaldo moving to Real Madrid. He's a Manchester United fan, so he's worried, and he thinks Sir Alex will be as well.
I don't really think that's the case, to be perfectly honest. Ronaldo's cool, calm and collected. He's a very mature young man who knows his own mind and will only do what he wants to do.
Yeah, and so he might end up playing for Chelsea.
Yeah, watch his space, I'm sure.
0500 909 693 is the number to call whilst we're watching this space. Tim, over a year ago, I emailed you saying that I thought Brazil wouldn't qualify for the next World Cup for the first time in its history. Dunga won the South American Championship and got a reprieve, but Brazil didn't impress. Do you think that Brazil's national game is in a state of crisis? In England, everyone says that there are too many foreigners. In Brazil, it's the opposite. All the good players leave the game far too early to join foreign clubs for more cash, understandably. I feel that Brazil's national game is in the doldrums. Paraguay and Argentina in the next few days, we shall see. Come on, Fluminense. P.S. Got there more by luck than judgment, by the way, says Tony in Basingstoke.
Yeah, Fluminense in the final of the Copa Libertadores. Haven't played especially well, but have showed terrific character to get goals at important moments and get lots of goals from set pieces. So they're in the final of the Libertadores for the first time against another first-time finalist, LDU of Ecuador. But more immediate matters, two fascinating games for Brazil in the World Cup qualifiers, away to Paraguay, who are top of the table on Sunday, and then at home to Argentina. I can hardly wait on Wednesday night. It's an interesting moment for Brazil. There is a certain crisis of identity in the side. They just had a disastrous little tour of North America. They beat Canada 3-2 and were lucky to do so. It was just a ridiculous back pass that gave them the winning goal. And then they lost 2-0 to Venezuela. Now, to put that into perspective, they'd played Venezuela 17 times before, 17 wins, 78 goals for, 4 against. So they lost 2-0. What's the problem? Well, one of the problems is I think Dunga is not quite clear what he wants to do. I think he's perfectly entitled to experiment in friendlies. I think that's what friendlies are for. And one of the things that he did in both games was play with the defensive line much higher up the field. Brazil in recent times have really shone against Argentina, when Argentina have come at them and Brazil have just gone at them on their counter-attack. Brazil's counter-attack is the best in the world. It's unstoppable. But when you play against teams who pull men behind the ball and stop you counter-attacking, then Brazil haven't looked quite so clever. They've got lots of wonderful talent up front, but getting the ball there, working the midfield triangles, it's difficult to do that with Gilberto Silva plodding around the midfield. So Dunga was trying to bring the team higher up the pitch, trying to have controlled possession in the opposing half of the field. And they got done playing on the offside track time and time again. It's difficult for Brazil to play the defensive line high up the field, I think. The centre-backs don't really like it. The full-backs are more interested in pushing forward than giving cover if the ball's played over the top. And sometimes the midfield don't put enough pressure on the ball. I've just been watching them in training, and they didn't look particularly good this week. I saw a training game yesterday, first team against the reserves, and obviously training game is nothing like the real thing, but still you see them struggling a little bit. It could well be, though, that these difficult games away to Paraguay and home to Argentina, these could be exactly the kind of games to bring the best out of Brazil, because quite often when they're favourites, quite often they fall on their faces. When they've got their backs to the wall a little bit, that can be the time to watch out. So that there are problems of identity in the Brazilian national team, I think especially in those midfield positions, but there is still extraordinary talent in some of those positions, especially up front, and never, ever write Brazil off. It's the worst mistake anyone can ever make.
Colin in Dundee, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you? How's all doing?
All good, all good.
Yep, I was just calling to see what you thought so far of Celtic keeper Arthur Boric, because I know that you would only get limited opportunities to see him, and it's been more or less reputation you have heard. But so far, I would say that he saved a very poor Polish team from being on the receiving end of some severe hidings. What kind of valuation you would put on him, and whether or not you think he would make it in the Premiership?
I think that's a perfect assessment. Actually, he was excellent in the. He was excellent in the game against Poland, against Austria even. He's one of the best keepers there. Like I said before, the one little concern I have about him, where he's come a bit unstuck in the SPL a few times, long-range shots, he can sort of seem like he's lacking concentration. He takes his eye off the ball a little bit.
I would actually have to take issue with that. I actually think that's actually one of his strengths, where his main fault would be that he struggles with corners. But some of the saves, obviously I see him a lot, but some of the saves he pulls off from long-range shots can be fantastic. But again, when you're playing with a club like Celtic, maybe he finds it hard to concentrate for when he's not involved so much. But that is a possibility. That is a possibility,
of course. I suppose, as you were saying before, there's maybe a relative similarity between his role for Celtic and Poland, because, as you say, Poland haven't played very well, and they've been under the cosh. So I suppose where we see the best of Boruc is during the Champions League games.
That's right, yeah.
Where he's given a lot of work, but that of course is the difference between a very good goalkeeper and a genuinely great goalkeeper. The one who can stand there for 80 minutes and then do what's needed to be done. So I guess that's the question: how he would get on if he was at one of the top Premier League clubs. Because I guess as a Celtic fan, which I presume you are, you would be disappointed if he went to say a mid-table Premier League team.
Well, but as long as we got a decent amount of money for him, and you can actually say he's probably earned Celtic about £20 million over the last 2 seasons already, because it's the reason we've qualified for the Champions League. 2 seasons in a row, got to the last 16, 2 seasons in a row, and he's been probably the main reason for that. So
what would you say is a reasonable price if you were going to sell him?
If Hearts can sell their keeper for £10 million, I mean, you have to look somewhere between £10-13 million.
I suppose what you would add to that as well, if something was going to happen in the next month or so, then prices are always inflated after a major championship. Yeah. So that could be an opportunity for Celtic to cash in, and of course they could reinvest the money elsewhere. I suppose it depends how vital you can consider Boruc to what they would hope to do in the Champions League next season, maybe make a more concerted push. But there's definitely the possibility of them maybe getting a few more players in to make that a reality. Of course, they've been quite heavily, I understand, in the UK press with Alexander Fry, who's unfortunately injured at the start of this tournament. So that could be an interesting possibility, and definitely that is the sort of signing that has half an eye on the Champions League, I think.
Yeah, because we actually have a few good goalkeepers at the club, anyway, that I think they could do a good job for us until such times as we manage to find another, because we plucked Boric from nowhere, and I think we could cope until such times as, maybe we did it again,
Yeah, where could you imagine Boric going if he was to leave?
I think David Moyes at Everton, with their situation where their goalkeeper was more or less on loan, especially with Celtic contacts. I think anything less than Everton, Boric wouldn't do himself any justice. If it went anywhere less than that.
Well, he clearly loves Celtic. He clearly loves the club. So I don't think he'll be in any hurry, as you say, to like jump for any old move. But if that is what he wants eventually, he's certainly done himself no harm so far in these Euros.
He's still got a job to do in the Euros as well for Poland, amongst other things. But AJ in Streatham, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Hiya.
Morning. Hiya. I just wanted to ask Tim a question about Emilio Insua and what he reckons about his chances of getting into Liverpool's first team next season. And also, does he know anything about Rafa's scouting system in South America?
Well, he's gone with quite a few, hasn't he? There's been a little South American enclave there, which I think is always good news for the new fella coming in. Insua went very, very young indeed. I wonder if he doesn't regret it just a little bit. For all of the things that he's picked up, had he stayed Boca Juniors, he'd be in the team. He'd be in a team that was, in semi-finals of the Copa Libertadores. He'd really have a chance to press his claim, especially as, even at senior level at the moment, Argentina look very, very weak left side of that defence. They don't have a lot of options for left side of the defence. It looks like Argentina are going to play now. They're going to play a back three. They've been playing back four. They've just experimented in a little tour to North America, and it looks like they're going with a back three. Now, Insua, I think, would be terrific for the left side of that back three position that's Gabriel Heinze, I think is going to fill. I think for the long term, Insua would be a much better bet. I would imagine that the Olympics this year will be really, really important for him. Getting in that squad, it's Argentina are the reigning gold medalists. Olympic gold, and it's very, very important to him. It's important to Brazil as well. It's the one title Brazil have never won. So both the South American countries will take this really, really seriously. Now, Insua will really want to get in that squad because that's his chance to impress the people back home. He was never present last year when Argentina won the World Youth Cup. Now the Olympics is for players under 23. With you can get in 3 overage players. I think that it's a really, really important tournament for his long-term international ambitions and reminding the Argentinian people of his presence. In terms of his prospects at getting a game with Liverpool, I'll pass this one across the Atlantic to Andy Brassel. What do you think, Andy? Do you think he's got a chance of getting more in the team this year?
I'm not convinced, to be perfectly honest, especially as they're looking to strengthen the left-back area. Docena, I believe, is still close rather than having actually completed his move. I could be wrong on that. Please.
Yeah, he hasn't completed it yet. But, I mean, to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of Liverpool reserves this season. They won the actual North Division Premiership, and also they won the actual national one by beating Aston Villa. And Insua has just been actually one of the best players in the actual team. And
where has he played? Has he played left back or left side?
Left back.
Because he can play left-sided central defence as well. When I first saw him, I saw him for the Argentina under-20 team the start of last year. And my question mark against him, he looked very solid, calm, well organised. But I just wondered a little bit
left foot as well, though, Tim.
Yeah, nice left foot. But I just wondered a little bit if he was going to. When I look at Heinze, I think top level, I don't really think Heinze is a left back, and I don't really think he's quite a centre back. He's not quick enough for a left back, and that doesn't make enough an attacking contribution to play left back in an attacking team. And as a centre back, I don't think he's commanding enough. I think he throws himself on the ground too much, and perhaps not quite tall enough for European top-level centre-back. And my worry when I first saw Insua was whether that might apply to him as well, whether he might just fall at the very highest level, whether he might fall between the two stools of being between a centre-back and a full-back. What do you think after seeing him so much this season?
I've seen a lot of him in the reserve, and he's probably been, out of the 11, he's probably been the second, probably the best player in the actual season. He's just had a storming season, and I just hope to God that Rafa gives him gives him a chance, because he really deserves it. And also, I wanted to ask you, have you heard of Gerardo Bruna?
No, he's one that went very, very early to Europe, and I've never seen him. I've heard the name, but I've never seen him, so I can't make any comments on him.
Right. I mean, what I wanted to just say is that I think that Insua is going to be a quality player, and I hope that Rafa does give him a chance next season.
Well, you've said it. AJ, thanks very much. Paul in Greenwich and Woolwich, Arsenal?
Yeah, I'm an Arsenal fan. First, I'd like to talk about France, why they're not doing so well.
Well, Arsenal are playing for France now, are they?
Nah. I know you're a Charlton fan and everything. You'd love to hear Arsenal.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
Yeah, but guys, I'd like to ask, who do you reckon they should suggest for Arsenal to buy in the summer? Because I think next season we really need to do it.
So why are France not doing so well for us, Andy?
Well,
first of all, I think Raymond Domenech, despite getting to the last World Cup final, has never been particularly loved by French media, or, come to think of it, French players either. I think there's definitely something not quite right in the camp. Of course, there's always the question of egos when there's so many the big club players in the same national setup. But I was speaking to a French journalist earlier this week, and asking him what the story was and how they were approaching it after the Romania game. And he just said that the atmosphere was terrible. The players weren't really chatty. They didn't really seem to be enjoying training and all that. Of course, they've got the quality that they can pull a performance out of the bag, and they looked like they were going to do that for a point. I thought this evening they put a lot of pressure on Holland after initially going a goal down, but once they conceded the second goal, that was it really. The stuffing seemed to be knocked out of them. Like I said,
Andy, can you confirm something for me that the Brazilian press have reported about Domenech? They've said that he doesn't pick players of the star sign of Scorpio.
That actually is true. It's meant to be part of the reason that he's fallen out with David Trezeguet. He's never hidden that. He's a little eccentric.
And of course, David Trezeguet is Argentinian.
He is, yeah. So does that mean that when you get called up for the French side, you have to, like the floaters on Float On, you have to come and say, "Cancer," and my name is Larry. You have to give your star sign before you get in the team.
Well, I can tell you he doesn't pick Virgos either, because I haven't received a call yet. So.
I wouldn't pick John Virgo either. He plays snooker.
The second part of your question.
I have a second question.
Yeah, Paul, go on.
What players do you reckon Arsenal should buy in the summer?
I think Samir Nasri is a very interesting choice.
They say he's going to be the next Rodan, they reckon.
Pardon?
They reckon he's going to be the next Rodan, French Rodan.
I don't think Nasri himself is over the moon with that comparison.
What about Benzema? Would he be a good signing?
He would be, but he would cost far too much, and Arsenal would never be able to afford him.
What about David Ria? Would he be a good signing? The Spanish player who scored the hat-trick. They said like he's his best friend and stuff.
I think that there's a good chance that could work. Again, you wonder whether Arsenal would spend the sort of money required to get his signing. But the thing about Ria that's so good, he's so intelligent in the runs he makes, in his movement. He's a great finisher as well. Real touch player, real sort of Arsenal player, I think. As far as strengthening the squad, as I said,
I really would like some defenders, really. Better than centre-offs when we lose our best defenders.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of strengthening that needs to be made there, and there seems to be a bit too much of a gap between the experienced players like Kolo Touré now and Gallas and what they've got in reserve. As far as like Traoré, for example, there's a lot of potential, but still very green. What I was going to say, a lot of Arsenal fans tend to think that they're missing goals in wide areas, especially since losing Ljungberg and Pires. Who I do think is an interesting option, and I know Spurs have been looking at very closely because, of course, Juan de Ramos is the former coach of Sevilla, is David Capel. He didn't make the Spanish squad in the end, but he's terrific. Just turned 20, real old-fashioned touchline hugging winger, lots of pace, terrific balance, and I'm sure whichever half of North London he would end up in, he'd be a great hit in the Premiership.
Yeah, Paul, merci beaucoup pour la conversation avec les nouvelles de Arsenal aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. Dave on the M1 in Rotherham, good morning.
Good morning, you okay?
Yeah, fine, thanks very much, mate. Go ahead.
I have a question for Tim. I'm a Sheffield United fan, and we had some tie-ups last year with a club in China and one in Hungary. And there's been talk from the board for a while about a tie-up with a club in Sao Paulo. And I just wondered if you knew anything of it and if you thought there was any benefit to a championship club tying up to a Brazilian club for like a feeder club, really.
Well, so often you hear these deals mooted and then so little seems to come of it. I remember Leeds, there was some talk coming out of Leeds of a tie-up with San Lorenzo of Argentina. And I went to San Lorenzo, and no one seemed to know anything that was going on about it. I suppose that there are benefits, but the thing that gets in the way is the work permit problem. Because it's difficult to bring young South Americans in without a work permit, and if they don't have an EC passport, they need to be established internationals in order to come in. So there are problems with it, but I think there are things to be learnt. There are, for example, now coming into the European game, along with Brazilian coaches, are Brazilian physical preparation specialists. Now, Brazil, they tend to think they have the best physical preparation specialists in the world, the best the best football doctors in the world, the best physiotherapists. They take all these things very, very seriously. So there are lots of little bits of knowledge. It doesn't have to be just players. There are other aspects where clubs can learn from each other, where, say, a Brazilian club can learn about the marketing from Sheffield United, because English clubs do this so much better, treat their fans better than Brazilian clubs. So the trade of information doesn't just have to be players. It can also be knowledge and know-how. And if both sides are disposed to have an open mind and trade information and trade knowledge and know-how, then it could be profitable for both sides.
All right, great. Okay, well, I mean, as you say, I wonder if it was more like a commercial benefit rather than like a player swap type benefit. So maybe it is.
Well, keep an eye on it. If you hear anything concrete, then get back to us, and I'll try and check it out from this end.
Hey, Dave, thanks very much for that. Angie, I've got to ask you this question. I've had about 3 or 4 texts on this from Jimmy in Kent. The Dutch could lose to Romania, whereby the French and Italians would both be eliminated. Now, Dotton, I'm not saying that they do such a thing, but does the esteemed panel and your good self find it intriguing? Yes, I do. And Aline Hovers also said, couldn't it be much better for Holland to lose to Romania, thus ejecting France and Italy from the competition?
I think there's more of a risk of that happening because the Dutch will rotate and the Romanians will be more motivated, I suppose. But I don't think even if the Dutch had their full team out, you shouldn't write off Romania. I mean, they've got some excellent players and a really good team ethic, as well as being great in qualifying. I feel there's a bit more to come from the Romanians, and especially Adrian Muti.
Right, so no conspiracy theory for you?
I think it's very possible that France and Italy will go out, but I don't think it's necessary for a conspiracy theory to be carried out for that to be the case.
And Tim, Sean in York has texted us about 10 times begging me to get you to do your Jonathan Woodgate, the Brazilian version.
Well, first of all, just why would the Dutch be afraid of either France or Italy after beating them so soundly? Jonathan Woodgate was, according to the Brazilians, Udgate.
Tim and Andy, thanks very much.